YouTube. It's everybody. I feel like this is the modern world. So did you know, and I don't know if we put the story in the show notes, so they're doing live real-time facial tracking now. That's a thing, right? So China is doing this thing where they can track every single citizen, or they want to be able to track every single citizen at all times through live tracking on webcams and monitors like this. And so I feel like we've stepped into the Big Brother state here in the studios at Orange County Catholic Radio.
It's like, sure, we'll use your free platform, but you get to monitor our faces.
It's a little freaky, but I mean, it's some weird, creepy, honestly, some weird, creepy implications as far as if you were dealing with a tyrannical regime and you wanted to then, you know, organize, you can't. Or say you're in China and you're part of the underground Catholic Church. Well, now they're tracking every single person on these cameras so they can see who's congregating together, when they're congregating together. And the UK is looking at adopting this. So this is the show before the show, people. It's where Chris expresses his paranoia to 3 different cameras. But and San Diego has a thing where they can actually do that. If you get pulled over in San Diego, they can take a picture of you. And if you don't have ID, they'll take a picture, and then it'll bring up, and they'll say he's one of these 10 people in the database.
Oh my gosh, are you bashing my San Diego?
I love San Diego, but Big Brother's watching.
Seriously?
Always watching.
So they can take a picture if you're just coming in to be pulled over and they're trying to figure out who your identity is?
So say you get pulled over, you don't have ID, or maybe you're a corpse on the side of the freeway. They can take a picture of your face, and through facial recognition matching, it can give you like, well, we think he's one of these 10 people.
Oh my gosh, that is creepy.
If you're in the in the database of, like, you know, perps, if you will.
I'm done posting.
All right. Well,
yeah,
I'm gonna
so
post the posting now.
Story. I, a number of years ago, was not living at home, but was driving like the family minivan. I was known as a soccer mom in college, driving around my minivan. Even some of the professors would be like, hey, are you the one with the minivan? Well, I think I forgot to tag when it was going up. It wasn't tagging.
That's fine. I'm going to try to, I don't know what that means.
So anyways, long story short, I ended up getting a ticket at one point. But the thing is that the car's registered to my dad. And so the ticket went home. And they were trying to claim that I got this red light kind of traffic ticket for turning right, trying to nail me. And it came up as my dad. It was very comical. He got pulled in to the hearing for a traffic ticket that wasn't his. Pretty entertaining. My mom definitely enjoyed those photos of me doing a little drive-by.
Yeah, they got rid of the red light cameras in a lot of municipalities here in Southern California because of privacy issues and things like that. It was saying other people, and so
most places aren't allowing them.
Right. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to move Instagram over because these poles are getting in the way no matter what. So
right.
I'm gonna move you guys just a little bit.
That should work.
The thing is that if we need to close the door,
Now I got to get in the Instagram. We could probably raise the tripod. Sorry, we're trying to bring Instagram into the conversation here on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And we have this kind of hinky tripod set up with an iPad on it. And so at any moment, oh, sorry, that was what I was worried about. The Instagram feed just crashed. So Timmery's iPad did not crack, though, and that's a beautiful thing. All right, I am posting to everybody else out there too right now to share that show. And hey, as we're sharing the show, getting ready to go live, if you could share the show, that would be fantastic as well. Just on the Facebook feed or the YouTube feed, on the social media, that would you do if you could share it. Has anybody got off Facebook? YouTube people, are you on YouTube because you got off Facebook? Instagram people, you're on Instagram because you're young people and you don't Facebook. But have people been exodusing Facebook? I don't know. I'm still there. Is that I don't know.
I do not check Facebook that much. I post more so and interact with the show, but I'm not on regularly.
I see. I like.
And life is so much better that way.
I like Twitter, honestly, for the
Twitter's
brevity of
great.
it, and you know.
So in other words, you're saying you don't want to hear everything people have to say?
Well, I feel like Facebook's just become reposting articles and arguing.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know, whereas YouTube, I feel like you get more takes from individuals. There's less reposting.
Right.
You know, or they'll repost someone else's comment and comment on that. Shared. Thank you for sharing that, Barbara. We appreciate that.
Shared. Because we're just rambling on.
Well,
once people enjoy us, should I reposition that again? Or do you think I could not see from over there?
Maybe just tilt it a little bit.
Tilt it.
Tilt up. I do.
Hopefully I don't drop Instagram again. This is really
All
comical.
right.
So now you can watch us. Maybe you two have multiple screens.
This is how the magic happens, and it's magical.
This is a trial run with Instagram.
Let me
Bear
share
with us.
this thing.
I'm ready when you are.
I'm good to go. I'm not sure I think I did everything I was supposed to do. All right.
So we have fancy music leading into the show. So you're going to see us doing hand gestures, especially for people who are just joining us as the fancy music goes in, because it's coming through our headphones, not for you.
I think I like our snap. Is that what, Instagram?
That is the Instagram.
I like the position here. Here I feel like it's my double chin cam, and this is obviously my balding cam. But this one I feel like is the good one. So.
He's like, it is friendly to my left side. Okay, we're ready to get started.
Cool.
You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery. National speaker Timmery Millington has been a passionate advocate for life as long as she can remember, helping Gen X through Z answer the call to true feminism and authentic manhood. Chris Mueller is a national speaker, author, father of 6, and is currently making a Catholic TV show for families as he travels speaking to over 10,000 people each year. Between Chris having over 18 years experience in Catholic lay ministry and Timmery's holding a master's degree in biblical theology, together they cover the week's hottest stories from a Catholic worldview. You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery.
So this morning on my way into the studio, Chris, I'm driving by the fire station, which I pass by every morning, but today the doors were up and the guys were out in front of the station, and then I look across at the park and there are a bunch of women doing some sort of early morning exercise boot camp, and I just started cracking up thinking, here is that, little dance of love, dance of the mating ritual going on. I was cracking up. I've never seen those doors open at the fire station.
Oh, so are you saying that the firemen were out to observe the boot camp? Is that what's going on?
Yes, and I'm saying the women intentionally were boot camping across the street from the fire station. Just
that's
saying.
Possible. See, I see a boot camp every morning when I drop my kids off for school, but they're kind of tucked away in the back of the park, and you just see women running up a hill.
Oh, no, this was right across the street from the fire station. Prime real estate.
Yep. Mine looks like women. It's like women at Gettysburg in spandex. It's like they're all charging up a hill together. And
you're like, go, morning inspiration.
Every morning I see that, I think, I am so happy to not be part of that group.
I'm not like you're waking up super early every morning to go and work out. Anyways, right?
Here, a little bit there, yeah.
You're like, maybe not been as consistent as I was hoping.
No, well, anyway.
It happens. You have kids, right?
Well, so I'm still kind of nursing this injury from I had a car accident in August. And
I thought you were going to say you were nursing your newborn child.
No, I'm not doing that.
Chest feeding is quote unquote a thing and the correct term to use now.
Wait, what?
You've never heard of chest feeding?
I've never heard of chest feeding.
You know that is you can't say breastfeeding anymore. You're supposed to say chest feeding, Chris.
So you're saying that when a woman is nursing her baby, you cannot say breastfeeding, it's chest feeding?
It is chest feeding. Because a man can, hook things up to make it happen too.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
And so when you said nursing, I mean, it doesn't lines babies.
No, I have no idea.
Anyways, so you're still nursing this trap injury?
I do have, my neck, my lower back, it all kind of flared up on me. And so I was like, well, this is not fun.
This past week, I was cracking up as I saw pictures on Twitter of an arrest made in Toronto, Thanos. The Avengers might not have been able to take him down, but the police in Toronto did.
So are we, Thanos and Avengers Infinity War. I actually did see the film with my daughter the other day, and it was one of those like, your head just explodes. There's just so much going on, and I am fascinated that it has gone so long without like a deluge of spoilers on the interwebs.
In other words, did we just do a spoiler at all?
No, I don't think we did. I just said, I don't think I gave a spoiler, did I? Sorry.
I'll just be quiet.
Yeah, isn't it interesting though? Okay, so it is interesting that in our society, that is the thing you cannot do is spoil a film.
Isn't that funny? My brother really spoiled, I think I've mentioned this before, one of the Star Wars movies, one of the main characters that dies, Han Solo, and I go, what?
Yeah.
You spoiled that for me? I think I was just talking about this last week.
A year and a half later, I ruined it for my father-in-law. He'd never seen it. It's like, dude, a year and a half, I can't be blamed.
Speaking of like the comic world, though,
right, yeah.
no spoilers, because for those of us who are just catching things a year later, thanks CW for posting Black Lightning now on Netflix. We're just catching up and seeing a little bit of what's going on. Maybe not a show I would recommend.
Yeah, the CW in their handling of the DC comic series is so disappointing because I want good comic book superheroes on TV, And the CW has chosen to make all of their comic book series, in a lot of respects, a vehicle for their social agenda. And Black Lightning was a series. My wife and I watched the first episode the other day, and I was like, wow, this is a really great show. Watched episode 2, and all of a sudden we're pushing kind of the gay agenda. And by episode 3, it was as if the episode had been written by Planned Parenthood. It was unbelievable.
You know, I saw you recommended to, hey, check out this episode. This is like, it's something coming from Planned Parenthood. And I went, okay, you know, I threw it on while I was getting ready. And as I'm sitting here watching, it's so subtle at first. You know, a teenage girl comes up, hey, I'm ready to have sex, says this to her parents out of nowhere. And it's funny because they were just commenting how their other daughters, you know, the strong, independent woman that they raised. And here's their 16-year-old saying, I'm ready to have sex. Let's talk about this at the dinner table. And it killed me, Chris, because I'm watching it. She's kind of throwing questions out at her parents, and her parents are not responding with a pro-abstinence, pro-chastity response, because the questions she's asking are apparently a little hypocritical because, you know, they were sexually active when they were younger.
Right. No, and contextually, she doesn't just say, I'm ready to have sex. She says, I'm ready to have sex, and we're going to on this date, and we've already made plans. I just wanted to let you know. And the parents go, well, when did you guys have sex the first time? And they and they completely fail, completely fail. And then later they joke about it in the episode. And then the mom, and a very wise mom, goes, well, I'm going to take her to the doctor to make sure that she's prepared. And, this is the world we're in now.
What does that mean, right?
Yeah, we're going to get her on hormonal birth control because that's the fix. And we know that pregnancy rates have gone down since hormonal birth control. We haven't had a rise of STDs or teenage pregnancy since then.
Oh, no. I was debating with someone from Planned Parenthood just last summer at the mall. They're out there fundraising, going on and on about how Planned Parenthood's being defended or defunded. Yeah, they are being defended, unfortunately, by some people they shouldn't be. But they're going on about, contraception and, we're reducing, high-risk pregnancies. And they're going on. And I said, but why aren't you talking about sexually transmitted diseases? And she goes, well, we do. That's why we're so pro-protection. I said, well, you're pro-contraception. And, yeah, you guys give out free condoms that also have a high failure rate. Just saying. But not to mention the fact that there's still skin-to-skin contact that can take place. And you're encouraging kids not just to have normal sex, right? Vaginal sex, but you're encouraging them, sorry for young ears, but to engage in oral interaction, which is an exchange of bodily fluid that puts you at risk.
Well, and the premise is do this and babies aren't part of the mix. And so you're setting up the abortion even at that point, right? You're saying, oh, well, no, you can engage in sexual activity. Babies aren't part of that mix. Go ahead. There's no repercussions. Obviously, you've got the STD problem. But then when you do have a baby, you've already set up the table for, well, gosh, this was unexpected. This was unplanned. Well, you're kind of working for it, actually. Like, it wasn't unplanned. It wasn't an accident. It was just you lied to yourself about the reality of what you were doing.
I'm going to press pause really quick here. Jim, what time are we at? Because I put my time card up there.
Yeah, I was just wondering the same thing. I didn't. Yeah.
7:20? Okay, so we've got 4 more minutes. Do you want to keep an eye on it and just bring us out? Using more tech, we'll set your phone up for the next one. With
Sorry, Facebook Live. We realized, and everybody, we did realize we had not set our time in a place where we could see it, and this is very tight time stuff. So I'm going to set my watch for 7:20 or for 7, and that'll give us 20 seconds to get out. Does that work?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right.
Yep, I messed up. I didn't have my clock set properly.
All right, we're back in.
I rarely do that. Okay, so bringing it back in. Jim, if you want to take a note for time, because I know this one's a little harder to get. Okay. So one of the interesting things, Chris, that I saw in the show, so here the girl comes up, I want to have sex, I'm ready, this is when I'm going to do it, like you said, but she's asking these questions, and clearly the parents to begin with aren't quite happy that their kid wants to have sex, and they're also feeling uncomfortable. The dad is clearly really unhappy, but he keeps his mouth shut the whole time, and I think this is a theme of fathers today.
Isn't that what modern men are supposed to do? Just be supportive and keep our mouth shut, because our opinions on these matters of feminine things don't matter, right?
It really killed me because I think that this is the case across the board, that a lot of fathers are actually not okay with their girls having sex. They, are themselves men who were once young men in high school, and they know the lack of commitment, the desire for the pleasure in the moment. They know what kind of circumstances and the mindset that are coming into the entire situation. That being said, Chris, you look at it, and for some reason, not just on TV, but in general, fathers are a lot of the time okay with going, well, I'm just going to be quiet. Yet this dad actually did kind of do something in a way.
Well, yeah, on the show, he confronts the young man And it's super weird. That is even super weird and awkward.
Hold on, this was I thought he did a great job.
Kinda. I mean,
He didn't address the fact, hey, don't have sex with my daughter. Instead, he like walked around the topic of STDs with not actually addressing it. He basically asks the kid, hey, you know I care about you outside of sports and so forth. How do you shower? And basically what he's getting at is the kid gets out of the shower. He's in these nasty, locker rooms, gets out of the shower and he goes, well, what do you dry first? Basically, the kid dries his feet first, and then after that. And the dad implies, so you're telling me you want to give my daughter athlete's foot?
in places where athlete's foot should not go. Yeah, again, as a dad, though, and as someone who cares about this young man, I think that was a very roundabout, kind of a wimpy way to go about it. He should have been like, hey, my daughter said that this is what you're planning. This is why that's not going to happen. Right. This is why that's setting you up for a situation you're not ready to handle. You're not ready for that.
Well, and while he did say something, I was glad he somewhat did. It actually didn't say, hey, you could be risking my daughter to sexually transmitted diseases that could prevent her from actually having children down the road, could lead her to be infectious toward other individuals as well. Like, we could go on and on here.
Yeah, well, what's wrong with saying to this young man, are you ready to be a dad? Oh, no, mister, we're going to use protection. We're going to do this. Well, what if protection fails? You ready to be a dad? You ready to father my grandchild? Are you ready for that? No, then you're not ready to do this, because that is a possibility. None of these methods of contraception are 100% safe. And unless you're ready to say that 1%, I'm ready for that, then you're not ready for this.
Yeah, I think that overall, this is a moment where we can begin to equip ourselves, right, to better talk about these situations when they come up. You know, I all the time encounter people who, hey, I'm getting ready to move in with my boyfriend, right? What do you do in those circumstances? You know, I think depending on who it is, you can, maybe ask questions, be gentle. They may know where you're coming from. But what if someone you know is being sexually active before they should be? What do you talk about? The harms of birth control could be a good starting point, right? The harms of sexually transmitted diseases, starting to walk down a path that can open up a bigger conversation by starting maybe with some of the scientific elements and then saying, I'm actually kind of concerned.
Right. I mean, someone's getting ready to move in their boyfriend. You say, well, are you ready to get married? Oh, no, that's why we're moving in. Well, how is moving in with each other different than a marriage in your mind?
I just had it the other day, this exact conversation, and not someone I know super well, but good enough that I just said, oh, so are you guys talking about getting married? I figure this is the beginning of the conversation, right? Are you guys talking about getting married? And it just breaks my heart because I see so many people willing to shack up and say, well, actually, in some ways, I'm okay with a temporary element of this. And I'm seeing women being more willing than before to cave on that of, I know it's not forever, but, we'll see where this goes.
And the sad thing is, you look at how that affects long-term outcomes and marriageability. And what we find for women in particular is living with someone for a long period of time before you get married, then breaking up with that person, your chances of then getting married on the other side are much lower because you've kind of given away your marriageable years. Right. And so for a man, as he goes out, typically he gets more of a job, he gains some status. Being a little bit older and marrying someone younger isn't as big a deal. But the reality is, if you're an older woman looking to marry a younger man, it's a bigger deal than that. Right. And so you lose your marriageable time.
We're going to be talking on the next show. Be sure to catch this. If you're listening, your radio network might not air both shows. So be sure to catch the episodes of Trending on iTunes or on Spreaker. You can find them both on mine and Chris's social media platforms. And I have the whole archive of all the shows on my website as well, timmery.com. But we're going to be talking about how women are less happy than they used to be. There are fewer moms than there ever have been. That's on, the next show coming up. But I think that we're seeing a trend across the board that as we're more willing to shack up, as we're okay with a lack of permanence, that lack of permanence often ends up leading us down a path of a lack of selfless love, a lack of continued steadfast love.
Right. If you're willing to put yourself in a situation where someone can say, well, I don't want you forever, I want you for right now, what's the long-term situation there? What are you saying about you and your value? No, we've got like 124.
So one of the other issues that I see coming out of the Marvel Universe right now that I've kind of been thinking about a lot lately and watching the show Arrow is I'm a little frustrated, Chris, right now with the whole issue of how they're dealing with same-sex attraction and people who identify with liking people of the same sex. It's killing me right now, Chris, because in my heart, it is breaking because it's not just treating these people as people, but it's actually focusing on the sexual side of them, and it's reducing them down to their sexual orientation rather than going, hey, this guy's going, okay, I'm gay, and he's talking. Instead, they're going on and on about fooling around with their partner, you know, kind of conversations that don't take place as often on that show with heterosexual individuals.
Right. No, there's absolutely a push on the part of the CW to normalize things that most families aren't willing or ready or wanting to see normalized. It's an agenda that's being pushed, that's being driven. If you're listening to this out in the wild world and you're raising kids and you think, oh, it's a superhero show, it's The Flash or it's Arrow or it's Supergirl. I mean, Supergirl season 2 was essentially a lesson on how to come out of the closet. I mean, it was absolutely just straight that. Her sister was dealing with her sexuality and blah, 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 and it was the conversations with friends and family. I'm going to say, if you're raising kids, the CW superhero shows are not ones you're just going to go let them watch. I would say you got to shy away from those. And
the shows that you do maybe let some of your older kids watch, you want to definitely walk through with a little bit of conversation as you go along.
A lot of conversation as you go along. A lot of
conversation. We'll be right back on Trending. More to come about China, women, and the abortion issue and how you can get involved and speak up. We'll be right back. Okay, that was a really hard segment.
Timing-wise, that was a mess. Anyway.
Woo! Okay, sorry about that, Jim.
Do we want to drop that? We've got 124 from the...
So do you have your phone? We can set it up here.
Yeah, I do.
I just take off so the screensaver doesn't turn on.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's what I do. So I'm also going to try and bring us back on Instagram.
So
oh my gosh.
You guys haven't heard the new music. It's awesome. You really, if you haven't listened to the show on the podcast, go back and check the podcast out. I think we lost Instagram, YouTube. You can check it out on check the podcast out. You'll hear our new intro music if you can't catch the show live. I think it's fun. I'm enjoying it. So right now we're figuring out how to get the time clock set up so we don't kind of, so we have 12 minutes per segment. And if we don't have that clock set up to show us, it's kind of like you're out on the ice and you're just sliding around and you don't know anything.
You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery, where morality and culture meet, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics. Chris and Timmery will be right back. Tweet them at C. Mueller Tweets, spelled M-U-E-L-L-E-R, and at Timmery, that's T-I-M-M-E-R-I-E.
Stopwatch.
Okay.
Yep, that's what we usually do. And I can see to the second.
All right.
So you guys, oh my gosh, I think that's maybe the second time I've ever not had the clock. And I realize I think we're about 7 minutes. I'm just going to keep going. When's a good pause? It won't interrupt the conversation.
Yeah, I noticed that too at one point. I was like, and so I hit my timer just to get a rough sense.
See where we were?
Yeah.
Okay. I know. Poor Jim. Jimmy G's over here. We have to do a more like slide through with the camera.
I know.
And flip it.
Usually he's over there like checking his Facebook or going out.
He'll be going, what's trending? Hey, you guys, check this out. Okay, we're coming right back in now. Did you want to do music? Go for it.
You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery, where morality and culture meet, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics.
So this past week, Chris, I was looking at some of the news, and I always kind of my heart breaks when I hear the topic of China and China's one-child policy and what is happening there. You know, they have 37 million more men than women in China right now. And just looking at this, it's heartbreaking, especially when you see pieces coming out from CNN. Danielle Kampumer actually just came out talking about abortion in an op-ed piece and basically claiming, Chris, that to be pro-life is to be pro-abortion.
Yeah, I read this article and it was the weirdest, carnival mirror sort of thing I've ever heard. It's just, her whole premise, and I think this is the premise of the pro-abortion community, is it's pro-life because it's pro-my life. it's a very self-centered view of reality that, well, no, as long as it's pro-me, it's pro-life.
And she kind of comes in and she tries to say, there's a higher maternal mortality rate taking place for women in certain, states here in the United States. And she kind of points to Texas as an issue. But here's the deal, you guys. We've got to approach this from two perspectives. So her main arguments are, well, if you're really pro-abortion or anti-abortion, then you're pro-death, essentially. You're pro-death for that mother. And she's trying to make this argument. She says, hey, look, I'm a mother of two. I have, another baby on the way right now, but I can be where I am today because I had that abortion before. So she's defending abortion at all costs. I have to say, this reminds me a little bit of some of those Cosmo pieces where you see people kind of putting together this, I'm a, perfect mom, perfect life, perfect children, and I had an abortion, I'm great. These are kind of those types of pieces you would see that were fake news, right? Being written, false resources from Cosmopolitan over the years, and we actually have seen a lot of people leave Cosmo sharing this.
Right. Yeah. This is absolutely, and it's an opinion piece. This isn't news reporting. This is op-ed. This is coming out. But CNN, very irresponsibly publishing this. Yeah. This. She writes that the only reason she could go on to do what she's done in her life is because she had an abortion. And there's a fallacy there. Like, you have no idea what your life would have been had you had that child at 23, how that would have enriched your life, what that child would have gone on to do, him or herself. That door just got completely shut. And this seems like a justification for your decision to murder your child by saying, well, I've built a great life since then and I wouldn't have been able to. How do you know you wouldn't have been able to?
Yeah, the whole issue, I think that it's interesting. And actually, New York Times wants to hear from you. If you're a pro-life woman, or any woman, in fact, they're actually taking a survey currently having to do with abortion. They're like, we want to hear from you women. What do you think? What was interesting is there are 2 pages to the survey. The first page you can go through and fill out, giving your words about what you think about abortion, what people around you are saying. Then the second page, they're asking questions about what your stance is on abortion, but what's interesting, they try to make it so that you can only submit it if you've had an abortion.
Oh, wow.
So I know a lot of people are just putting in like a random date for their quote-unquote abortion that they're supposed to have recognized they had, but otherwise you can't speak up in this New York Times survey. I'll be sure to post a link to it so that you can plug it in, but I end up just putting a random date in when they
back up a couple steps. So you have to report having had an abortion in order to fill out the survey about your opinion about abortion.
In order to submit that second page, you have to put the date you had an abortion.
So New York Times isn't saying women tell us your opinion about abortion. It's saying women who had an abortion tell us your opinion about abortion.
But they never say that.
No, it doesn't say that on the title, no.
And they don't get to that point until you made it to the second page of the survey. My mom sent this to me the other night, and I'm sitting here going, are you kidding me?
Right. So so granted, it's such that's a biased way to conduct the survey. You're obviously looking for what you want in that, because you have to be very self-aware to say, I'm going to go online, fill out this survey about abortion, and I am self-aware enough to say that this really hurt me and it was a point in my life where it changed. The majority of people are going to try to justify those actions regardless.
I can't get it, Chris. It's confusing to see where people are coming from. And I think that this is an issue I have in general, where people are saying you can't speak up on something unless you've experienced it. But you know what? I mean, Danielle Kampumer is a perfect example. She writes a CNN piece saying that you can only be pro-life if you're pro-abortion. Yeah, I'm going to respond to her piece. Here's one of the first things. If you look at worldwide where abortion is legal, the countries with the highest maternal mortality rate are the United States, Africa, Russia, Guinea, and Vietnam, right? You look at that and, Guyana, not Guinea, Guyana and Vietnam, you look at this and you go, okay, these are also places that have legalized abortion. Guess where, Chris, has the lowest maternal mortality rate?
Where has the lowest?
Ireland, where abortion is totally illegal, right?
Well, for now. I mean, we need to keep praying for them in the Save the Eighth campaign.
Exactly. May 25th, praying for them. Bono, Liam Neeson just spoke out as well, supporting abortion. Man, like Irish actors, Irish musicians, you guys have made incredible success, but you are not being true to the people of Ireland who are pro-life. What is this?
Right, and just to kind of back up that Save the Eighth, Ireland has a constitutional amendment that says that life is protected, right? And that's the Eighth Amendment, apparently, in the Irish Constitution. May 25th, there's a huge referendum to protect or to strike down that amendment. And so when you hear people say save the 8th in regarding to Ireland, that is not saying get out and vote on the 8th or save a day. It's referring to that amendment. It's actually May 25th. And we as pro-life people need to be praying, fervently praying for the Irish people that they would continue to protect life from at all stages of that.
I'm going to give you a challenge again this week. I asked it of you last week as well. Please take an hour this week to go to adoration and offer that hour for those women who are pregnant today and are at risk of losing their children, whose children's lives are at risk of being lost because of Save the 8th, and also for perseverance for the people of Ireland as they are truly fighting this day in and day out, trying to make sure that there is a future for Ireland and not like Denmark, where Denmark is putting out, satire ads trying to get people to mate and get together because they're not replacing themselves.
Can you give me that number on China one more time? Because you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, it slipped by. How many more men are there than women in China as a result of their two-child policy?
They have 37 million more men in China.
Percentage-wise, I can't even figure that out. I mean,
no.
The male to female ratio there.
I look at these stories and they're heartbreaking coming out of China. I was just reading another story the other day about a little baby girl, Bao Jun, and she herself is being saved in some ways from China's quote-unquote two-child policy. And I'm going to kind of just throw this out there. It is actually still a one-child policy. The thing is that if you want to have a second child, you maybe can have a second child with government approval, but only do you possibly qualify for that government approval if you yourself and your spouse come from a family where you both were only single children. If there's more than one child coming from your household, your siblings, then you do not have that even opportunity to get government sanction, right, in order to have another child. So it's still a one-child policy. China has just kind of tried to make it look like it's a little better. Whether it's one children or two children, they're forcibly aborting children. And Bao Jun is a perfect example of that. Her mother, actually, the mother of Bao Jun really faced pressure from her mother-in-law because they found out that Bao Jun was another girl and they already have a baby girl.
Right.
And so they wanted her to abort. And basically some underground pro-life workers in China helped Bao Jun to live by assisting the mother with resources. And even then, that grandmother wishes that child wasn't there. And she would rather see that child left out. Like they would go and leave the babies in fields, Chris, in China to die, or maybe hopefully someone to save them.
And I think it's important, and you mentioned this demographic shift is not just China, right? Which countries did you mention was Finland, you said? They have the satire. Denmark has these satire ads trying to encourage people to have children. Japan is they're on an extinction right now. They're headed towards extinction of the Japanese people because of the low birth rates. It's not just where the state is mandating it. Anywhere where we're seeing this rise in the abortion culture, we're seeing demographics slide. And the United States is no exception. Our demographics are going down too. We're having less and less children, and we're seeing that jobs can't be filled because there aren't enough people to fill them.
Well, and I look at this, and in many ways, this all comes down to progress. If you look at the issue of progress, and we're going to be talking about this a little later in the show with the new, revolutionary tech coming out of Google, but essentially Japan, you go to Japan, people love going there today as a vacation place. Everyone talks about their high-tech toilets and how they play music and their seat warmers and how, everything is high-tech there. Well, have they maybe forgotten about people and focused on how wonderful and comfortable things could be? Have we maybe said, hey, let's abort children so that we can have more children later on and a longer career and a quote-unquote happier marriage or sexual life?
Yeah, it's this author's position of it's pro-life because it's pro my life. And not like life or death. It's pro my convenience. It's pro me growing up at 23 and being able to do whatever I want. And yeah, that's definitely spread, whether that be Japan, whether that be Europe, whether that be the United States. Everything is me, me, me all the time. And the idea of that I might lose a little bit of my personal freedoms in order to raise a child, people do not see that is a cost-effective value as far as their life is concerned. That they would be inconvenienced.
I want to throw this back out here because we started to touch on it, Chris, and that is, where do we see the lowest maternal mortality rate? like we said, starting number 1 with Ireland, the lowest mortality rate. Actually, I think the United States is 3 times higher than Ireland is, and we have quote unquote safe legal abortion. You'd think that we would see less maternal mortality rates given, you know, our level of medicine, our level of, you know, just our entire world industry and business is incredible here in the United States. You'd also think that we'd see higher mortality rates, lower mortality rates in places like Europe. Poland, though, is one of the other places where we see very, very, very low mortality rates. And it's interesting because even in Poland, there's conversation right now and desire to make abortion more accessible. And, you know, one of the main areas they're having to target to get on board are people within the Catholic churches. And so you're seeing Catholics kind of starting to really divide a little bit right now in parts of Poland because some of the louder voices are saying your rights are being denied you as women. You're not being allowed to enter through this deeper level of progress in the society because you're being burdened by children. We'll be back on Trending. We're talking more, so much to come about abortion, and also a 104-year-old man who traveled, unfortunately, to Switzerland. You'll hear why he traveled there and what we can do to speak up more. Okay. Awesome. Okay. We got all of those. Do you want to come in with just briefly on the governor and hit right into Sweden?
Sweden, the man traveling to, is that Sweden?
Switzerland.
Switzerland, yeah.
Switzerland.
Well, it did say Sweden in the notes. I don't know if I put that in wrong, but it was Switzerland.
It was Switzerland.
Yep.
So Switzerland's correct right there.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I fixed it last night.
Perfect.
Sure. Let's come on in on the governor. Are we in segment 3 now?
We're in segment 3.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yep.
That threw us off. Talk about a rough start. It happens. You ready? Yep, go.
You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery.
So this past week, I've been looking at just what's going on in the pro-life movement, you know, and we've been talking over the last couple weeks in particular about Iowa and the heartbeat law and how Iowa is now the safest place for preborn children to grow and gestate, right, in their mother's wombs. Well, did we mention, and I don't think we did, Chris, that the governor of Iowa is a woman? Governor Kim Reynolds is a pro-life woman who has spoken up and said, hey, not only have the people spoken, but I, as a woman, am here signing this pro-life law, right?
No, I think you were mistaken. She was a woman until she became a pro-life governor, and now her voice as a woman doesn't matter. She's apparently transitioned to a pro-life person, which is no longer a woman in the eyes of the pro-abort community.
You know, I was just talking to someone the other day who I actually didn't know leans more toward the pro-life movement and holds more pro-life, more moral views in terms of sexuality. And she was mentioning how in our society today, we see so many examples where there is no voice, no platform for women of faith, women of morality, and especially pro-life women, that we're expected to be silent, to not speak up.
If you want to be marginalized, take those traditional views of the sanctity of life, the sanctity of marriage, any of those things, and as a woman, you're just going to be off to the side. You don't exist. You might as well be out there, because we all know that like the March for Life is just a bunch of men out there. It's just a bunch of men making their women go. Because they want to keep them in the kitchen barefoot and having babies. It's a Handmaid's Tale. That's all it is, really. That's what it is.
Don't get me started. Oh, Handmaid's Tale makes me so angry.
But it's true. I mean, that's the way the media portrays it. If you are a woman and you're standing up as a strong advocate for life, the media is going to portray you like you're some kind of kook or you're some kind of crazy, or they're just not going to let your voice be heard at all.
You know, but she is not the only one. Governor Kim Reynolds is followed up this week by the Oklahoma governor, Governor Mary Fallin, who is also saying, hey, we women, we have a voice in society, and we're not just going to listen to what the loudest people and the loudest and most radical pro-sexual individuals are going to come up and say about how, you know, women should be able to just go have fun, have sex outside of marriage. Doesn't matter who your parent is, doesn't matter whether the children are impacted by this. So what we saw come out this week from Oklahoma is that they've basically protected faith-based organizations so that these faith-based organizations can still essentially help in adopting children, but placing them within family makeups that have a mother and a father.
Right, and I don't think most people realize that a lot of these adoption agencies are faith-based groups. And so when the state comes in and says, well, no, you have to give children to gay and lesbian couples, you have to give children to, single-parent couples, all these things, and whatever it is that's going to be contrary to the teachings of that group, you have a choice. You can either say, well, we have to abandon our beliefs, or we have to get out of this industry. And I remember this happened, I want to say Boston, years and years ago, that the state said you had to go ahead and give children to gay couples. And so Catholic Charities basically closed down their adoption system in that state because we can't say that these teachings don't matter. They do matter.
And, I don't think they're the only state. I haven't been following fully which states have really had to pull away from running adoption services. But the bottom line is, you guys, for some reason, we have pushed an agenda so heavily that it has impacted children. Adoption is about a child who is coming from circumstances where that parent is recognizing, I can't give this child the best possible life, right? And I myself have things that I also probably need to work on myself to be in a better position one day to have children. And so these are children coming into the adoption world, women choosing to place their children. Yet what's happening is political pressures and ideologies are saying, well, these children should be placed in homes where there are two mothers, two fathers. But the reality is, and we talked about this last week, these children needed good, solid examples of a mother and a father in their upbringing. Bottom line.
Absolutely. We've made children accessories, right? Everybody has their 1 to 2 children, and it's accessory, and you have a right to your child. And how dare you deny them their right to a child? That's just not reality. Not every couple can have kids. Not every couple can have kids as much as they want. And the reality of a man and a man is they just can't make a baby. So that right doesn't actually exist. It's one that has to be forced. We have to say something natural isn't necessarily the way it is. We have to kind of change that.
I was just listening on a conversation the other day. Chris was mentioning this too, where you're just places and you kind of overhear what's happening in the background. A perfect example, they were talking about Mother's Day and how the kid was having a difficult time because the child had 3 mothers that he had to wish Happy Mother's Day to. And, the person was kind of commenting, well, yeah, of course, they love me, but, they also really desire to spend time with and talk to their birth mother. And I mean, I guess that makes sense. She did birth them after all. And I'm sitting here thinking how confusing for this young child having to face the challenging circumstances of not ever being able to grow up with their actual mother, right? And now being adopted, which is great. That anyone could love them and raise them is fantastic. But imagine the confusing moment of, I have 3 moms. What does this mean?
Right. And there's so many questions I've got. I think what's really important to look at here too is by saying that faith-based groups can continue to operate as faith-based groups and operate as adoption agencies, what you're doing is you're saying there are more groups helping to get kids into homes. When you take the faith-based groups out of it, you narrow that pool, so then you have less opportunity for children to be adopted. By having more agencies out there, you've got more kids getting into homes faster, and so we can do the vetting, we can do all the things that need to happen. When you take Catholic Charities out of it, for instance, the pool shrinks significantly, and there's just not the opportunity. It takes longer, and we all know that the state government handles everything the best, right? So why shouldn't we just give it back to them? They did a great job with the DMV. Let them hand out babies too solely. I mean, it's just not. We need these other groups involved. We need people like Catholic Charities involved in this process to get kids into homes.
And we need, the best possible circumstances. I get that not always will there be a mother and a father raising that child, but we can push to do the best we can to give that child their born right to a mother and a father. That's how they were created, and that's how they're meant to be brought into this world.
Well, right. And Jordan Peterson talked about this. We talked about it last week. We need the influence of both sexes. We need that as we grow up. We develop because of that. That's part of how the brain structures and forms itself. You take that out, you're saying, well, that one isn't as important, and it's just not backed up by science. It's a social experiment that you're doing because you're pushing your social agenda, and the reality is that the outcomes change because of it. And we have to acknowledge that for the health of the child.
And you're talking about clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson. If you didn't catch the episode, one of our last episodes, we talk about this. What happens when a child is missing a mother, missing a father? You've got to check it out. It's not just Chris and Timmery saying this on Trending. It's many social scientists, psychologists looking and saying a child needs a mother and father. And you guys just put this into your minds. We are born, naturally born right to a mother and a father. No matter which way you put it, that's how we're made. That's what we're made for. You can't have a baby without sperm and an egg. And where do sperm and an egg come from? At the end of the day, we've got to remember this.
Right. And I love the arguments always go to the fringe. Well, what about when the dad dies? Or what about when the mother dies? What about then? Well, that's a terrible situation, right? And obviously you want to, you do the best you can to bring in the grandfather or uncles or people to bring in the influence of that lost parent. But to say a tragic situation justifies choosing that tragic situation is wrong, right? To take that fringy argument and say, oh, no, just because that there's some people who live in a single parent family because a tragedy happened doesn't mean we say, oh, well, that's now the normal, because you can compensate or you can make the best of a terrible situation. It doesn't mean you choose that situation for a kid.
Well, and for some reason in our society, Chris, we have this aversion to suffering, aversion to challenging circumstances. And when I look at the issue of women saying we should always be able to have access to abortion, or I see examples where people are upset saying, well, Catholic Charities shouldn't work anymore because they're only limiting children to a mother and a father. Well, we may go through suffering. We may have sorrowful circumstances where a spouse dies, where maybe you do end up having to raise a child on your own. That being said, at the end of the day, we need to make the best possible circumstances that we can. And, you know, when I'm looking at what's happening right now, I think we've taken our mindset and turned it and said, no, you know, suffering's something that we need to avoid at all costs. To the point just this week, Chris, a 104-year-old man traveled to Switzerland. And I look at this, why did he travel there? Not because he had some terminal illness looking for great care in Switzerland. He traveled there because he decided he wanted to end his life on his own terms.
Right. And this gentleman's been an advocate for assisted suicide for years. And he point blank says, I'm doing this because I want to bring more attention to this cause. I'm going to Switzerland to do it. I mean, you're 104 years old. I don't know that you need to rush death that much. It's coming. Right? I mean, like, really, it's coming.
Okay, so people might say, okay, it's imminent, right? Or just like people might say, death is also imminent for people with terminal illness. This is the difference between Switzerland and the United States. In some of the states here in the United States, California being one of them, we have physician-assisted suicide. So if you have a terminal illness, you can work with your physician to choose to end your life now if you have a terminal illness. Well, in Switzerland, you don't have to have any type of terminal illness. You can choose whenever you want to end your life through quote-unquote things like what people are calling death with dignity. That is no dignity. What is dignity is looking at the idea that my life is not just within my control, and seeing that I, as an individual, am called to be a witness to others, a light to the world, and that light even when we are suffering.
Right. And I think John Paul II witnessed that so bravely to the world as we watched him go through this aging process and deal with sickness and deal with illness. And he witnessed to the idea that you push through suffering, you continue, and heroically, he lived that out very publicly for the world to see as an example to this culture, to say that there's benefit, there's merit to suffering, there's witness to suffering. We need to be ready to share that. Yeah, the Swiss law is terrifying. It says that basically all you have to say is, I acknowledge in writing that I'm taking my life willingly and I'm not being forced. And so anyone of legal age can say, no, I'm done.
What kind of example does that set for our young people, who we are seeing a rise in suicide for young individuals? And yet we have countries that say you can end your life whenever. Well, if that seems quote unquote compassionate and dignified, well, why can't kids today, if they're upset because mom and dad aren't together, they got a bad grade on that test, they feel lonely,
broke up with their boyfriend or their girlfriend,
they had sex before they were ready, and for most young women, they feel remorse after that.
Right. Yeah. What's to say, we've lost perspective. As a Catholic, as a believer in Jesus Christ, we have to acknowledge that this physical life is a blink in eternity.
That's Chris Mueller. I'm Timmery Millington. We will be right back on Trending, talking about this and much more.
Well, that snuck up on me.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Sorry.
Blink in eternity. And that's it. Just a blink. We're done. Just like that. It's a break. Snap your fingers like Thanos. I'm not going to tell you what happens because I almost did. I almost said, go see the movie If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. We should all be allowed to talk.
Well, anyone on social media, not on the show, I kind of did let it slip with a comment I made at the beginning, but I won't draw attention to it
Oh, man.
for
What
anyone.
a great film.
Spoiler alert. I was kind of surprised you weren't going, spoiler.
You know what? Okay, this is my own pet peeve. You can't spoil a movie, but you can put a big sticker on the back of your car that says send nudes. That's okay, right? That's fine. But spoilers? Oh, no. You are anathema if you're a spoiler.
You saw that?
I see that.
bumper
Yeah, there's a guy who
sticker?
drives by every day when I'm dropping my kids off. He's got a big send news picker. But you've seen it with the VW signals, like instead of Farfignugan, it's Blanken Grooven, and you see a stick man on a VW sign. Truck nuts exist, but you can't have spoilers, right? This is the world we live in.
I am morally culpable for giving that slight spoiler at the beginning of the show.
All
I
right.
apologize.
We just need to adjust the social compact a little bit. We need to, if we
Oh
can say
my
no spoilers,
gosh.
we can also say no truck nuts. Like, we can do that. We can say no babies with profanity on their t-shirts. We can do that.
We can.
You're getting the good stuff, guys. All right.
Well, there's so much more that could be said. I was even just thinking the other day about a shirt I have that I don't wear in public very often
Anymore.
because I don't wear in public very often because it stirs conversation, which can be good, but also not in the best way. And it's a shirt that has a gun on it, and it said, "Would it bother us more if we use guns?" And abort73.com.
Oh, right.
.org, right?
Yeah,
So if
totally.
would it bother us more, especially I should be wearing that more now. You know what? Because of this gun conversation, I'm going to wear my shirt
We
more
have
out
brought
with the
that
gun.
up. You've brought it upon yourself, interwebs. She's wearing the shirt more.
Can
It's true,
you-
though. All right. We should probably
Jimmy,
do a
can
radio
you
show.
tap that close on the screen up here? If it comes up again during the show, can you just tap the blue in the middle? Notice how it's trying to stop the video? Yes, right there.
We've lost Instagram again.
Yeah, it's still there if we just tap that.
Oh,
and
hey.
I don't know if they can
There
see
you
us
are. I
on
don't
the
know what
screen.
happened. Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is a trial run, just so you guys know. We're just starting to get the proper tech up there to make it
All right,
happen.
segment 4.
Segment 4. Did you want to do more on Switzerland or?
Yeah, I do. I didn't get to finish my thought there.
Okay, bring it in, and then I'll transition us. Ready?
Sure.
You're listening to Trending with Chris and Timmery, where morality and culture meet, offering an eternal perspective on today's hottest topics.
So we're talking about this scientist, David Goodall, who traveled from Australia to Switzerland to end his life. And just this push for these end-of-life laws saying that basically it's your right to kill yourself. And I think what happened, we've lost perspective that this physical moment is just a blink in eternity, and that as a Christian, we're called to the truth that we live in God's victory, that when we die, we go off to heaven to be with the Lord for eternity. And so whatever suffering comes in this life, I can endure that. Why? Because this is not the whole story. This moment isn't my whole story. It's just a tiny little blink in the whole story of God's victory and my call to live in that victory. I think we need to teach that more to our kids. We need to get out of this idea that everything is this moment right now, this post on Instagram. We need to start telling them that no, you're part of a much bigger story.
This week we saw on YouTube and Facebook, they're coming out with conversations saying that they're banning advertisements taking place on social media. Essentially, Google and Facebook have said any advertisements that want to have anything to do with the Save the 8th campaign, that is to make life protected in the country of Ireland, to make sure that children are not aborted. You guys can't have any advertisements that are paid for. We're going to ban that from happening. Why are they doing this?
Well, I think it's clear. I mean, the reality is that the traditional streams of media, radio, TV, all those things, are pretty much controlled by one side of the argument. And so social media gives a democratization of information. Anybody has a voice on social media. Anybody can post something and it can be repeated, or they can fund it with their own advertising campaign or what. And so Google or Facebook or all these platforms are realizing whoa, we can't control the narrative. If we change the algorithms to suppress it, people notice that, and then we catch it. So what we're going to say is, well, the only way we can control the narrative is by cutting it off and to stop that democratization of information. We're not making it a fair playing field.
You know, those two social media platforms, Google, social media-ish, and Facebook have really gone received a lot of flack essentially for allowing that conversation to take place, right? And their part in some of the political campaigns, both here in the United States and in other countries as well. So all of a sudden, as they're getting kind of hammered about this, some really popular people out in Ireland started saying, well, we're blaming you again, Facebook and Google. So basically Silicon Valley's responded, and this is huge because it is silencing a voice that has been heard on social media finally. But it's a reminder to us, you guys, that we can't depend on technology where we've built up some social media presence. We can't depend on other individuals and businesses to promote our information because, you know what? Life isn't fair today. I mean, even Chris and I had our show. We talked a lot about the issue of gender ideology. It was a fantastic show just a few weeks ago. You can catch the podcast or on Facebook. But YouTube pulled it off of social media. They banned it. It had a high number of views for some of our shows because we're just hopping on YouTube, but it had a good number of views. It was searchable. We're talking about trending topics, and all of a sudden, they pull it right off. I've been going through the appeal process, no information coming back, and we're not the only ones.
Right, because it's offensive.
It's offensive. But, you know, did we say anything that was overly vulgar, right? I mean, we don't speak about vulgar things per se, but we do speak truth. And we were talking about the science and some of the issues between the gender ideology movement and what we see in psychology and the impact on human development.
Right. And I think this goes back to the idea of freedom of speech only counts if your speech is the acceptable speech. Right. And that's, again, that shouldn't be the way it is. Freedom of speech should be able to protect things that are objectionable in the political world that you're going to disagree with. We should have the ability to try to convince each other. Like, we should not say, well, this is the accepted idea. Everyone's agreed with it. Argument is closed. And essentially, that's what Facebook and these groups or YouTube, these groups are doing, is they're saying, no, that offends some people, so no conversation anymore.
You know, and this isn't the only circumstance. There's this sweet video, I will post it on my social media, from the abortion pill reversal, which actually Dr. George Delgado, I just saw him this morning at Mass. I used to work with Culture of Life Family Services, where they started the abortion pill reversal. It basically does this. If you are in the process of having a chemical abortion, mifepristone, RU486, and you take the first set of pills that begins abortion process, and say you change your mind, well, you can go online and say, I regret my abortion, or abortion pill reversal, and you can get connected through the hotline with a doctor that works through a very safe medical procedure, giving you higher levels of progesterone and hormones that support the pregnancy, that try to save those lives. They have a 68% success rate. There's been huge accolade and recognition of this over the last few months in particular, even though it's been going on for almost 10 years now. Even one of the doctors coming out of Harvard, right, has come out, coming out of Yale School of Medicine, has come out saying, his name's Dr. Harvey Kilman. That's why I'm looking at Harvard here. Right. But Dr. Harvey Kilman sitting here saying this makes biological sense, and in fact, he would recommend it to his children. But what's happened to the video?
It got pulled.
Right.
It got pulled because it was apparently objectionable. Right.
And the video is maybe 2 to 5 minutes long, and it's a woman who tells a story of, I started the abortion process and changed my mind, and we started looking up ways to reverse it if possible. And guess what? She did, and she was offered the assistance she needed. And it's one woman sharing her story about not having an abortion, yet that has been silenced.
Right, because you can't say anything offensive about the sacrament of the secular culture. Right? I mean, you can't, this is the sacrifice that the culture has asked for, human life, and you've spoken against the gods of this age, so it's being shut down.
So it's a reminder, I think, this last week in particular, with this shutting down on social media, and again, praying for the Save the Eighth campaign and for human life in Ireland. It's a reminder that we have to take to the streets. We have to step in front of those abortion clinics. We have to have those difficult conversations. We have to be willing to be judged and hated and ridiculed. And guess what? What did Jesus tell us? Exactly those things.
Well, absolutely. I think it also, we have to, as we look out and we look at new media and we look at these message streams, we have to realize that Facebook or, Twitter or all these things, it's rented land. You're leasing this land. You don't own it. And so if you're trying to organize for life, then you have to be building something that can last past this, whether that be your blog or your email list or your community, like the actual physical people you live around. You're going to do more good long term that way, because a lot of people have found this out. YouTube or Google or Facebook, they can change the algorithm, or they can just shut you down, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's a private corporation. You don't have rights on their network. They own the network.
And maybe the circumstances might not even be defending the topic of abortion, which we should always be willing to speak out against, that marriage. Maybe it might even be you're in a circumstance where your work is being called into question, right? And you are a person of faith, a person of integrity, a person of truth and honesty. And you have to stand up for that truth and that honesty without getting aggressive, right? In the midst of conversations, but with being honest, with making a stand both for yourself and for the sake of being moral and honest within the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, more and more we have to realize that the conversation has to be had, but we have to find ways to do that person to person. We have to find ways to do that that can't be controlled and shut down.
And people are going to misunderstand you at times. And I think that being willing to be that voice and that light and kind of willing to, okay, I can carry this. I have a friend who once said, you see these shoulders? They may be small, but I can take a lot more. And I already am carrying a lot. And I think all of us should have that attitude. We might have a lot on our shoulders right now, but I can take more.
Right, absolutely. I also think, you know, it's funny, as Catholics, we tend to feel like we're underdogs in this culture. There are 1 billion Catholics worldwide. You can't be 1 billion underdogs. You can't. I mean, we're something like 25% of the population.
Right.
That we're a huge group. If we would just stop acting like a bunch of whipped puppies and start saying, whoa, wait a minute, I do have a voice. My voice is much bigger than I am. My little shoulders can't carry that much weight, but if we all get together, we're like ants and we'll strip that carcass. I mean, we can do that, right? But we have to get out of this mentality of, oh, well, you know, there's nothing we can do. It's that's the way it is. Ho hum, ho hum. No, that's not true. We have to start working together. And again, if we all get used to this idea, we're going to have uncomfortable conversations. If 20% of the population start having uncomfortable conversations, I think we might start changing some minds.
Amen. I mean, look at Ireland, look at Poland, another two places that have a ton of Catholics. Ireland, they're speaking up, and I know I keep bringing this up, but my gosh, about 20 to 30 years ago, Ireland was facing the topic of abortion, and 7 young people spoke up and said, we're a pro-life people. And they rallied, they took to the streets. This was just 20 to 30 years ago when there was no social media to the extent that we have today. And so you too can do the same. I mean, even as Poland's debating abortion a little bit more right now as well. And we here in the States, look at the pro-life achievements that we have seen just in the last year.
Right. We are taking, I don't know if you realize that, we're taking back ground.
Yeah, we are. I was thinking of a line from the new Avengers movie, and we're kicking some serious butt and we're taking some serious names.
That's
PG
exactly
version, right?
Right.
PG version, like you guys, we are, and we should be so proud and we should celebrate these victories and we should encourage others. Join the mission. Join the mission. You know, this one man who was 104 years old decided to leave the mission, right? Maybe no one ever told him that his life is a mission. You guys, if we were just to understand for 1 second how much our Lord loves us and how much he desires for us to be with him, and that we ourselves are called on a journey of witness to others so that they too can know the love of God the Father. We are coming. I was bouncing it back to you. Okay,
right.
We're going to come like 1 minute. What do you want to do?
Sorry, I had nothing to add to that. I just you kind of closed it, and I was like,
Good
okay,
transition.
didn't know where we're going.
We could do Google Duplex.
Sure. We're in the third segment here.
Yes. We have 1 minute and 10 seconds, or we could even just do 45. How long is our exit? This is the end. How long is our out bumper? Or we could have an in bumper and an out bumper, and then
I think it's up to about 30 seconds.
even with the in and out, we already did the in.
The commentary at the end is, well, no, maybe it is shorter. It's probably about 15 seconds.
Okay.
Me saying, fine, Chris.
Okay. So it was 1 minute. Any ideas for bumper end? Fun moments when we're pre-recording a show and you're like, man, we have like 1 minute to go.
All right. So we ended with the man there. We have Google
Challenge.
Duplex on the.
Can do 1 minute of making a joke about it.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Do you want to bring it in?
Yeah. How did you end that last thing?
Loved by God the Father.
Loved by God the Father. All right. Sure. All right.
Ready?
Yep. You know, it is a sad situation when someone like this gentleman takes their own life, and I think it's something that we have to really lean into. Look at the people around us. Look at the older people around us, the young people around us. Not be afraid to get messy, to reach in, and really to share that love, so that every person knows it. If they're not feeling it, they should feel it through our actions as other believers. You know, I'm sorry. I want to jump sideways real quick. We're kind of coming to the end of the show. Have you seen what Google did with their voice assistant talking about the value of human life?
Creepy.
Super creepy. Yeah, there's so like value of human life. Now we've got like this idea that a robot could call you and you wouldn't even know it's a robot.
That is really weird. So basically you can say, hey, I want to book a nail appointment from 10 to 12, which I don't get my nails done, but from 10 to 12 on Tuesday, they can call and pretend to be a real person, and that person answering the phone would have no idea you're talking to a robot.
Yeah, seriously. So what is that? I mean, so what does that say about the value of people when now our interactions are indiscernible from robot interactions? How is that going to affect the way we think about each other? I'm not ready for this brave new world. I don't want any part of it.
And do we really save that much time? Who knows?
No, I don't really think so.
Okay.
That was terrible.
What?
I will add that later.
Okay.
Sorry, Jim. We're all over the place today.
And even if we have a longer, maybe we do the longer bumper in. Okay, Instagram, Facebook.
Love you guys.
Facebook, take care. Bye.
We'll be back. Yep.
Yeah, in like 10 minutes.
Yep.